of Being Earnest. Considered one of the greatest, The Importance of Being Earnest is a farce playing with love, religion, and truth, as it tells the tale of two men, Jack Worthing and Algernon Moncrief, who bend the truth in order to add excitement to their lives. This is a classic example of how Wilde displays his ability to convey warmth and wit through his hilarious characters and their outlandish situations. So sit back, relax, and pay a little attention. For today, we measure your wit by the pitch of your laughter.
Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with a wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, have you got cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Lane, I can see from your diary, when last Thursday Mr. Worthing and Mr. Shorman were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are written being consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at bachelor's establishment, servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for the information.
I attributed the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married household, champagne is really of a first-rate brand.
Is the marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself. I've been only married once. That too was a consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a very young person.
I'm sure I'm not interested in your family life, Lane. Thank you. That will do, Lane.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's view on marriage seems somewhat lax. Really, if the people from lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem to be as a class of having absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Ernest Worthing.
My dear Ernest, what brings up you toes down?
Pleasure. Pleasure. What else can bring anyone anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
Well, I think it's customary in a good society to have some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
And what do you do there?
Well, when one is in a town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
What nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. Hey, Shropshire is your country, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hey, why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
My dear fellow, you need not to say how perfectly delightful. I'm not sure that Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your presence over here.
May I ask why?
The way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
But I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I came up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Well, you are so utterly unromantic.
Well, there's nothing romantic about an absolute proposal. There's a bit romance in love, but nothing romantic about an actual proposal. You see, why one may be accepted, one usually is, I believe, and then the excitement is all over. The very essence of love is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I certainly try to forget the fact.
I certainly have no doubt about that. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use of speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Hey, please, don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're specially meant for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all the time.
Well, that's a really different matter. She's my aunt. Listen, have some bread and butter. Bread and butter is for Gwendolyn, and Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
A perfectly good bread and butter this is too.
Yes, my dear fellow, but you need not to eat as if you are going to eat it all. You see, Gwendolyn happens to be my first cousin, and she has a different area to judge people. And I also see Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your presence over here, and I think that Aunt Augusta will come here and she wouldn't have certain grave doubts of you being here. This sandwiches is for Aunt Augusta only.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, Gwendolyn will not approve of your presence over here because she may think that your presence over here might hamper her proposal. You see, girls don't marry the man they flirt with. They don't think it correct.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for all the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. And secondly, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn happens to be my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you need to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I do not know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Lane, bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness sake you'd let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it.
Well, I can see the inscription inside. It seems like this isn't yours.
Of course it's mine. You've seen it with me 100 times. And besides, you have no right to read whatever written inside. It's perfectly ungentlemanly to read a private cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule of what one should read and what one shouldn't.
Oh, that I have no doubt about.
Well, it seems like it's a present from someone of the name Cecily. And my dear fellow, you said you do not know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is, who lives at the Turnbridge Wells. Now give back my cigarette case.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily with the fondest love.
My dear fellow, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter I guess surely an aunt should be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to behave that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. Well, that is absurd. For good heavens, give me back my cigarette case.
But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with the fondest love to dear Uncle Jack. There is no problem of an aunt being tall or small, but why does an aunt call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You always told me it was Ernest. I introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. It's completely absurd of you denying that your name isn't Ernest. I have a card for proof. Mr. Ernest Worthing, before the Albany. I'll keep this as a proof in case you deny it to me, to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in the country and Jack in the town. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country. Now give it back to me, Algy.
Well, that does not account for why your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Turnbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. I can't quite make out. And besides, I always suspected you as a Bunburyist. In fact, the secret Bunburyist.
Bunburyist? What on earth is a Bunburyist?
Well, I'll reveal you the meaning of this incomparable expression as soon as you will tell me why you are Ernest in the town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation and pray to make it improbable.
Well, there is nothing improbable about the explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. The old Mr. Thomas Cardew adopted me when I was a little boy and made me, in his will, guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Miss Cardew, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you possibly would not appreciate, lives at my place under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is this place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that's nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may candidly tell that it's not in Shropshire.
I always suspected that. I've Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, tell me, why you're Ernest in the town and Jack in the country?
Oh, I don't think you will be able to understand that, my dear friend. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of a guardian, one has to bear a high moral tone on all subjects. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce either to one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. That, my dear friend, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
Well, the truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life will be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature, a complete impossibility.
Oh, that at all wouldn't be a bad thing.
Well, literary criticism is not my forte. Don't try it. What I always suspected you is a secret Bunburist, and I think you are the most advanced Bunburist.
What do you mean by that?
You have created your younger brother, known as Ernest, so that you can come up to the town whenever you want. On the other hand, I have created an invaluable invalid known as Bunbury, so that I can go up to the country whenever I want. In fact, if it's not for his bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis tonight. I've been certainly engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't invited you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know you're careless about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You would better dine with your Aunt Augusta tonight.
Well, I haven't got the smallest intention to doing anything of that sort. You see, I dined with her on Monday, and once in a week is quite enough to dine with her own relations. Besides, I know she's gonna place me with Mary Farquhar, who flirts with her own husband on dinner table. Quite scandalous. It seems like washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, I know that you are a Bunburist. I'm going to tell you the rules of Bunburying.
Well, I'm no Bunburist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'm going to kill him in any way. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So I will kill my brother, get rid of him. And I will strongly advise you to do the same with with that invalid friend with the absurd name.
Well, nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. You see, if you ever get married, which seems quite problematic to me, you will realize that a man not knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Well, I wouldn't want to know Bunbury if I marry a sweet, simple girl like Gwendolen, and she's the only girl I would ever love in my life that I would marry. I wouldn't want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. You see, in a married life, 3 is a company and 2 is none.
Don't try to be cynical, Alge. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
Well, it isn't easy to be anything at all. It's such a beastly competition out there. That must be Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen. Only relatives and craters ring the bell in that manner. Jack, if I can get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can propose to Gwendolen, Jack, listen to me. If you can propose to Gwendolen, may I dine with you at Wills tonight?
Well, I suppose so if you want to.
You should be serious about meals. I don't like the people who are not serious about their meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. That would leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions.
Forgive me, Algernon, if we are a little late, but we were forced to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. And I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolen, won't you come and sit here with me?
Thanks, Mama. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane, why no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
Aunt Augusta, I have to tell you with quite distressful way that There are no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really is no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with dear Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair turned gold from grief.
Her hair has certainly changed color. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Hand me the tea, Algernon. Thank you. I've got quite the treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farr. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
Aunt Augusta, I'm sorry I have to give up the pleasure for dining with you after all.
Well, I hope not, Algernon. That would put my table completely out. Your uncle will have to dine upstairs again. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
Aunt Augusta, I've received a telegram stating that my poor friend Bunbury is ill and they seem to think I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to be suffering from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is time that this Mr. Bunbury decides whether he's to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Health is the primary duty of life. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. I keep telling that to your uncle, but he is not taking any notice as far as any ailments go. Well, I must ask you, Mr. Algernon, if you would ask this Mr. Bunbury not to have a relapse this Saturday. For I rely on you to arrange my music on me. It's my last engagement in town. And one wants something that encourages conversation.
I'll certainly talk to Bunbury if he's still conscious, but I think I can promise you that he'll be all right by Saturday. And totally, I agree, music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I agree on that. I'll run over the program that I've drawn out. If you can come to the next room with me.
Well, that's very thoughtful of you, Algernon. I'm sure that the program will be delightful after I've made some changes to it. Gwendolyn, you'll follow me?
Certainly, Mama.
Charming date has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I often feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into the room that I often have to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I saw you, I've admired you more than any other girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the most expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest.
Gwendolyn, you really love me?
Yes, there is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Gwendolyn, you don't know how happy you have made me.
Oh, Ernest.
But do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
Yeah, I mean, of course it is. But supposing if it was something else, couldn't you love me then?
What else?
Uh,
No, wait. That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, darling, to speak quite personally, I am not quite fond of the name of Ernest. I think the name does not suit me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, darling, I think there are much other nicer names. Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No. There is no music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and all of them, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who's married to a man called John. She would not know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only real safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean to say, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Yes, you know I love you, and you led me to believe that you are not entirely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not been touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it is an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I will tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen.
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you?
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? It seems to me that you have had very little experience in how to propose.
Well, my own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. Oh, what wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quiet, quiet blue. I hope you will look at me like that always, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, I, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture, it is the most indecorous thing I've ever seen.
Mama, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you're nothing of the sort. When you do become engaged, your father or I will inform you of the fact. Engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, unpleasant or pleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter she could be allowed to decide for herself. And now, Mr. Worthing, I have a few questions to put to you. While I'm making these inquiries, Gwendolen, you will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama?
Gwendolen, the carriage.
Yes, Mama.
The carriage, Gwendolen. I must inform you, Mr. Worthing, that you're not on my list of eligible young men. I have the same list as dear Lady Bolton, you see. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to put your name down should your answers be what a really affectionate mother looks for. Do you smoke?
Well, I must admit I do smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London always. How old are you?
Oh, 29.
Ah, a very good age to get married. I've always been of the opinion that when one desires to get married, one should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit, you see. Touch it and the bloom is gone. What are your incomes?
Of between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
Between land or investments?
Oh, in investments chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to become either a source of profit or pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Oh, well, I own a country house with some land attached to it, of course, about 1,500 acres. However, I don't depend on that for my real income. As far as I know, the poachers are the only one who depend or get anything out of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that matter can be cleared up later. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl as simple and unspoiled as my Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Oh, I own a country. I own a house at Belgrave Square. However, it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. And I can get it back anytime I want at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham, I do not know her.
Well, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in her years.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square did you say?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that is a matter that can be easily rectified.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. And now on to minor matters. Are your parents alive?
I have lost both my parents.
Both, Mr. Worthing. To lose one parent may be seen as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth.
Well, I'm afraid I don't really know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents lost me. I do not really know who I am by birth. I was, I was found.
Found?
Yes, I was found. The old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a gentleman of very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing at the time. Worthing is a town in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman who happened to have this first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a handbag, a large black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
And in which locality was this ordinary handbag found?
Oh, it was in the cloakroom of Victoria Station. It was given to him in exchange as mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you've just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me a display of contempt towards the ordinary decencies of a family life. Not to mention the locality in which the handbag was found. A cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal some social indiscretion. Indeed, has been used for that purpose before this, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for recognized position in society.
Lady Bracknell, can you please advise what can I do? You know, I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
Well, I advise to you, Mr. Worthing, to find some relatives as soon as you can and to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is over.
Well, I don't know how could that be possible. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room back at town. I think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What does it have to do with me? You can hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and I would allow our only daughter, a daughter brought up with utmost love and care, to marry into a cloakroom and form alliances with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. Stop playing that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic you are.
Didn't go well, old boy? Don't say Gwendolyn refused you. She refuses to everyone. So ill-mannered of her.
Oh, no, Gwendolyn is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother, however, is perfectly unbearable. She is an absolute gorgon. Well, I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but Lady Bracknell definitely is one. She's a monster without being a myth. And that is rather unfair. I'm sorry, Algy. I think I should not be talking about your own relatives before you in that way.
Oh, I love hearing about my relations being abused. You see, that's the only thing that keeps me put up with them. Relatives are a tedious pack of people who have no idea how to live, nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. What about your brother? What about...
I don't want to argue about things. I always want to argue about things.
Well, literary criticism is not my forte, and I think that was exactly what things were made for.
Oh, I wouldn't mind that.
By the way, did you tell Gwendolyn that you are Ernest in the town and Jack in the country?
Come on, one doesn't tell these things to people. What ideas do you have of behaving to a woman?
Well, my dear fellow, the only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, or to someone else if she's plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. What about your brother? This time, what about your brother? What about your brother, Profligate Ernest?
Oh, before the end of the week, I shall have killed him. I shall say he died in Paris of apoplexia. A lot of people die of apoplexia, don't they?
Yes, they do. But it's something which is hereditary, something that goes into the family. I think you should say a severe chill.
A severe chill. Are you sure that's not quite hereditary or something?
No, it isn't.
Oh, then that is settled. My young brother Ernest got carried away suddenly in Paris in a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I heard Miss Cardew was a bit too much interested in your brother. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes about long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
Well, I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I will definitely make sure you do not. Miss Cecily Cardew is excessively pretty, and she is just about only 18.
Have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who is just 18?
One doesn't blurt out these things to people. And besides, Gwendolyn and Cecily are going to be the perfectly best of friends. In fact, I can tell you, I can bet you anything you like, that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sisters.
Well, my friend, women only call sister after they have called each other a lot of things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis, we need to go and dress up. It's nearly 7.
It's nearly always 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew when you weren't.
Well, what shall we do after dinner? We shall go to the theatre.
Oh, no, I hate listening.
We shall go to the club.
Oh, no, I loathe talking.
We shall go to trot round Empire at 10.
Oh, I don't like walking about. It's very silly.
What shall we do then?
Nothing.
It's so hard working doing nothing. Although I don't mind doing a work where there's no kind of objective.
Oh, Algie.
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back around. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie, you adopt a highly strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
Gwendolyn, darling.
Mr. Worthing, we may never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I'm afraid we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mama, I lost at the age of 3. Although, she may prevent us from getting married, and I may have to marry someone else, and marry often. But nothing that she can do will alter my eternal devotion to you.
My own one.
Ernest, the story of your romantic origin, as dictated to be my Mama with unpleasing comments, has stirred the deepest fibers of my nature. And your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. And the simplicity of your character makes you absolutely incomprehensible to me.
My own one.
Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. There might be a need to do something desperate. That, of course, will require very serious consideration. How long do you stay in town?
Oh, till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Well, I've already turned around.
You may also call Lane.
Lane.
You will allow me to see you out to the carriage?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Lane, tomorrow I'm going for Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
Pack my clothes, smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes,
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day.
It never is, sir.
Len, you're a complete pessimist.
I try my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There goes an intellectual and lovely, charming girl, the only girl I've ever loved in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm a bit anxious about Bunbury, that is all.
If you don't take care of your friend Bunbury, he will get you into the most serious scrapes someday.
Well, I love scrapes. You see, that is the only thing that people don't take seriously.
Nonsense, that's nonsense, Algy. You're always talking nonsense. Ugh.
Well, nobody ever does.
Cecily? Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation of tending to the flowers is rather Malton's duty than yours, especially when such intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open at page 15. We repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know for sure that I look quite plain during my German lesson.
Cecily, you know how anxious your guardian is that you develop yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German, even as he left for town yesterday. He always lays stress on your German as he leaves for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious that I feel he cannot be quite well.
Your uncle enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in someone who's comparatively so young as him. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty or responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
I'm surprised at you, my child. Your uncle has many troubles in life. All this idle merriment and triviality are going to be out of question in his conversation. You must also remember the constant anxiety he has about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology and things of that kind that can influence a man very much.
Cecily, I do not know if even I would be able to produce an effect on a character who in his own brother's admission is irretrievably weak and vacillating. I do not know if I desire to have an effect on him at all. I'm not in favor of all this modern mania of converting bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. Cecily, you must put away that diary. I do not see why you need it at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I don't write them down, I shall forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, memory is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself during the earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. But I hope it did not end happily. I hate novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, the bad ended unhappily. That is what fiction is, Cecily.
I suppose so. But it just seems unfair. But was your novel ever published?
No. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I say it in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, all these speculations are profit.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? I hope you are well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it won't do her much good if you both can take a short stroll in the park.
Cecily, I did not mention to you about a headache.
I know, Miss Prism, but I just felt instinctively that you had a headache. I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson.
Cecily, I hope you were not inattentive.
I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. Oh, I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Well, Mr. Worthing hasn't returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, he usually likes to spend his weekends in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim in life is enjoyment, as by all accounts, his good-for-nothing brother seems to be. Well, I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, doctor.
A classic allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. Well, I shall see you both no doubt at Evansing.
Dr. Chasuble, I think that I do have a headache after all. A walk might do me good.
Perfectly, Miss Prism, perfectly. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Surely, that will be delightful. Cecily, you will take a look at your political economy in my absence.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Just given out from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing before the Uncle Jack's brother! Did you tell him he was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you were in the garden. I mentioned that you were anxious to speak to you for a moment.
Please ask him to come here and do tell the housekeeper to keep a room ready for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm afraid he'll just look like everybody else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I suppose.
I hope you're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I'm your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked. You should not think like that.
If you're not wicked, then you've certainly been deceiving all of us in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you're not leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being normal at the same time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, I've been rather reckless.
I'm so glad to hear that.
But I think now you have mentioned on that subject, I would like to tell you that I've been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think that's something to be proud of. Though I'm sure it might have been a very pleasant experience.
Well, it's much pleasanter to be here with you, Cecily.
But I don't understand why you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Yes, that's a great disappointment. I'm obliged to catch the first train by Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
The appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is to not keep a business engagement if one wants to really make any sense of beauty of life. But I still think you should wait till Uncle Jack is back. He might want to talk to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone out to buy your outfit.
Well, I wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has absolutely no taste of neckties.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I would sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner at Wednesday night that you will have to choose between this world, the next world, or Australia.
Well, all the accounts I've received of the next world, and Australia doesn't seem to be encouraging. I think this world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
But are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not, and that's why I want you to reform me, if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I've no time this afternoon.
But would you mind reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather idealistic of you, but I think you should give a try.
I think I feel better already.
You look a little worse.
Because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Yes, thank you. I'll have a buttonhole first. I don't have appetite unless I have a buttonhole.
Yellow rose?
No, pink rose.
But why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it's right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Oh, Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. I think you are the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
Well, they are the snare in which every sensible man would like to caught up in.
I wouldn't like to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
Oh.
Dear Dr. Chasuble, you are too much alone. You should get married.
Oh, Miss Sanko, I can understand.
A woman? Never.
Believe me, Miss Prism, I don't deserve so neologistic a phrase. The practice, as well as the precept of the primitive church, was distinctively against matrimony.
That is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And do you not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation? Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive in marriage?
No married man is ever attractive, except his wife.
And often I've been told, not even to her.
Now that depends. That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Ripeness can be trusted on. Maturity can be depended on. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from the fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing,
Mr. Worthing?
this is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you till Monday afternoon.
Miss Prism, I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, hope you are doing well.
I'm very well, Mr. Worthing. But I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful deaths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he'll profit by this.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincerest condolence. You at least have the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
My poor brother Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
A sad blow indeed. Were you with him in the end?
Oh no, he died abroad. He died in Paris, in fact. I got a mail from the manager of the Grand Hotel yesterday.
Was the cause of the death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man, so shall we be.
Charity, Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am susceptible to draughts. Mr. Worthing, will the internment take place here?
He wanted to be buried in Paris.
Oh, no. In Paris. I doubt that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction. My sermon on the meaning of the mana can be adopted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I have performed it on festal days, on christenings, on harvest days, and on days of humiliation.
Dr. Chasuble, did you mention christening? I guess you know how to Christian, all right. I mean to say, you're continually christenings, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on this subject. They don't seem to understand what thrift is.
But is there a particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes, he was.
Most men who live for complete pleasure usually are.
Well, the thing is, it's not for any child. I'm very fond of children. No, the fact is, it's about myself. I would like to be christened myself this afternoon if you have nothing better to do.
But Mr. Worthing, surely you have been christened already.
But I don't remember anything about it.
But do you have any grave doubts on the subject?
I would certainly intend to have. Well, if you don't have any other things, or if you are you thinking that I'm a little too old for it now?
Oh, not at all, not at all. The sprinkling as well as the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
Oh, you need not have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary. Or rather, I say, advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you like the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5 if that suits you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have two similar ceremonies to perform at the same time. A case of twins, which occurred at the outskirts of your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, the most hard-working man.
Well, I don't know if that would be much fun being christened with other babies. I think it would rather be childish. Do you mind if I trot around about 5:30?
Perfectly, Mr. Worthing, perfectly. And now I must not intrude in a house of sorrow any longer. You just have to know that what often seems to us as bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
To me, this seems to be like a blessing of an obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! I'm so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on? Do go change them. Cecily.
My child, my child.
What's the matter, Uncle Jack? Don't look happy. You look like you've got a toothache. And I've got a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
Who? My brother?
Your brother, Ernest.
Well, I don't have a brother. What nonsense.
Don't say that, Uncle Jack. However badly he might have behaved to you in the past, he's still your brother. You can't do this to him. I will call him out now and you will shake hands with him. Won't you?
These seem to be very obviously joyous tidings.
After having resorted to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens.
Brother John, I've come down from the town to tell you that I'm really sorry for all the troubles I've caused you, and I intend to live a better life in future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to deny your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here very disgraceful.
Don't be nice, Uncle Jack. There's some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit quite often. And surely there must be some good in someone who's kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
He has already been talking about Bunbury, has he?
He's told me everything about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I don't want him to talk to you about Bunbury or anything else. It's perfectly good to drive anyone frantic.
Brother John, I'm really sorry for all the troubles I've caused. I agree that all the faults were on my side, but Brother John's coolness to me is very painful, especially I've come for the first time over here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't take his hand, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
Oh, it's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation. I think we should leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
Oh, you have done a beautiful job today, my child.
We must not be premature, Nanta.
I'm very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algy. You have no right to be Bunburying in here.
Mr. Ernest's luggage in the room next to yours, sir. I hope that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I've put it in the room next to yours.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing box, 2 hat boxes, and a luncheon basket.
Merryman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest Worthing has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir. What a fearful lie you are, Jack. I've not been called to the town.
Yes, you have.
Well, I didn't hear anyone calling me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
Well, my duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasure, even in the smallest degree.
I certainly have no doubt about that.
I'm in love with Cecily.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. Why don't you go and change them? It's absolutely childish to mourn for a person that is staying with you the entire week. I call that grotesque.
You are not staying with me for an entire week for a guest or anything else. You must go by the 4:05 train.
Well, I won't leave you unless you're mourning. I think it's very unfriendly. If I was mourning, well, stay with me, I suppose. If you won't, I think it's very unfriendly.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, but if you won't take much long. I've never seen a person taking so long on his clothes with such minimal results.
Well, at any case, it's better than always being as overdressed as you are.
Well, even occasionally I'm overdressed, I compensate it with my overeducated brain.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage. And your presence in my garden, absolutely absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4-5 train. I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, or whatever you call it, has not been a great success for you.
Well, I think it has been wonderful. It has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is all. There she is.
Oh, I merely came to tender the flowers. But I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
Oh, he has gone to send a dog cart for me.
He's going to take you for a nice drive.
No, Cecily, he's going to send me out.
Can we go too far?
Yes, and a very painful parting, I suppose.
It is always painful to part from people one is known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you, Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
It can wait, Merryman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, if I state quite frankly, you seem to me a visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness was your credit. If you will allow me, I will copy down your remarks into my diary.
You really keep a diary? May I have a look at it?
Oh no, it's simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. Once it appears in volume form, you can order your copy. But pray don't stop, Ernest. I delight in taking down from dictation. I've reached absolute perfection. You can carry on. Don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I've seen you, I have loved you widely, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think it's right for you to tell me that you love me wisely, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
tell it to come the next week, the same hour.
Yes, sir.
I think Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he got to know that you're staying here for the next week.
Well, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone else in the world except you, Cecily. I love you. Will you marry me?
You silly boy, of course! Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months!
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we get engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed that he has a younger brother who's very wicked and bad, you, of course, was the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prissy. And someone who's much talked about is often found to be very attractive. It was very foolish of me, but I instinctively fell in love with you.
Darling, when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Born out of your entire ignorance of my existence, I decided to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. Then I got you this little ring in the true lover's name and this little bangle for you which I promised you I will always wear.
Did I give this to you?
Yes.
Isn't it pretty?
Very pretty. You have wonderful taste, Ernest. That's the reason I've given you for you leading such a terrible life. And also, this box has all the letters which you wrote for me.
Letters? But darling, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote 3 times a week and sometimes oftener.
May I have a look at it?
No, that will make you far too conceited. Besides, the last 3 you wrote to me once we broke off the engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that I cannot read without crying a little.
But Cecily, was our engagement ever broken off?
Yes, on the 22nd of March. You can see the entry here. Today, I broke off my engagement. I thought it was better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But Cecily, why did you break off our engagement? I'm very much indeed that you have break off our engagement even when the weather was so charming.
It wouldn't have been a serious relationship if it wasn't broken off at least once. And I forgave you before the week was out.
What an angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally.
Yeah, a bit help from others.
I'm so glad.
But will you promise that you won't break off our engagement again?
Well, since I've met you now, I cannot break off the engagement. And besides, there's this question of your name.
Okay, what kind of name?
Don't laugh at me, Ernest. It has always been a girlish dream of mine to marry someone whose name was Ernest. There's something in this name which inspires absolute confidence. I pity any married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But darling, couldn't you love me if my name was something else?
But what else?
Algernon, for instance.
I don't like the name Algernon.
Well, my sweet loving little darling, I don't know why you have objection to that name. Algernon is not at all a bad name. It's an aristocratic name. Half of the chaps in bankruptcy code are called Algernon. But seriously, darling, if my name was Algernon, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I'm afraid I will not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here is thoroughly experienced with all the ceremonies and the rites of the church.
Yes, Dr. Chasuble is the most learned man. He's not written a single book, so you know how much he knows.
Well, I need to get ready for the most important questioning. The most important business. I shouldn't be away for more than half an hour.
Considering that we've been engaged on the 14th of February, and I met you only now, it's rather hard for you to leave me for as long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an infectious boy he is. I love his hair. I shall note this down into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has come to see Mr. Worthing. On a very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Mr. Worthing is in the library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask Mr. Fairfax to come in and to make tea for her.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, one of the most elderly women Uncle Jack is associated with in some philanthropic work. I hate women associated with philanthropic work. I think it's very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? What a very sweet name. Well, tells me we're going to be great friends.
It's so nice of you to like me in such a comparatively short time. Please sit down.
Sure. I may call you Cecily, may I not?
Sure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn?
With pleasure.
So that is all quite settled.
I hope so.
Cecily, I think this is an admirable opportunity for me to introduce myself. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've surely heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Cecily, Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown outside the family circle. I think a family is the perfect sphere for a man. Once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate. And I don't like that. That makes men very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It's part of her system. So, do you mind me looking at you through my glasses?
Oh no, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
Very well. You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
No, I live here.
Really? Then your mother, of course, or some advanced relative or female relative of advanced years resides here as well?
I have no mother, nor in fact any relation.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the odious task of taking care of me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How very secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. Cecily, however, I cannot help but mention that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I adore you. I've liked you ever since I met you. But now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help express a wish that you were a little older than you seem to be, and a little less alluring in appearance. If I may speak candidly...
Pray do, Gwendolyn. I feel when one has something unpleasant to say, one should speak candidly.
Then to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a moral, upright character. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the most moral, upright character are susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern or rather ancient history gives us with the most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
Excuse me, Gwendolyn. Did you mention Ernest?
Yes?
But it's not Ernest who's my guardian. It's his brother.
Oh. But Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they've not been in really good terms.
Ah, that explains it. And now that I think of it, no man ever mentions his brother. This subject seems distasteful to many. Cecily, you've lifted a load off my head. I was growing almost anxious. But you're quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should keep a secret of this to you. The little Conti newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The news will appear in the Morning Post by Saturday the latest.
Gwendolyn, I think there's some misunderstanding. Mr. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
This is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm very sorry, dear Cecily, if this news causes some discomfort to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But since Ernest proposed to you, he's clearly changed his mind.
If my poor boy has been entrapped into some foolish promise, I will consider it my duty to rescue him. And with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my poor boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach to him after we get married.
Miss Cardew, did you just refer to me as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into this engagement? How dare you? This is not the time to wear the shallow mask of manner. If I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I've never even seen a spade. It's very clear that our social spheres are widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Great many. On top of the hill, one can see as many as 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I would like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in a town.
That's quite a well-kept garden, Miss Cardew.
I'm so glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
Personally, I had no idea there were so many flowers in the country.
Flowers are very common here, as people are in London.
Personally, I don't understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does.
I guess this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression. I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much with it at present. It's almost an epidemic amongst us, I believe. Would you like to have tea?
Yes, please. Detestable girl, but I need tea.
Sugar?
No, sugar is not fashionable anymore. Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen in the best households nowadays.
Hand this to Miss Fairfax.
Thank you. You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. Miss Cardew, I am known for the gentle disposition of my nature and the extraordinary sweetness of my character. But I may warn you, you may have gone too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of another girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go to.
From the moment I met you, I knew you were false and deceitful. I distrust you. In fact, my first assumptions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. I'm sure you have other calls of similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my
Gwendolyn,
own Ernest.
darling.
A moment, Ernest. First tell me, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there was some misunderstanding, Gwendolyn. This man, who's right now embracing you, is my guardian, Dr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack!
Jack?
And here comes Ernest!
Darling!
Ernest, 1 minute. Are you engaged to be married to this young lady here?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could put such an idea on your pretty little head?
Thank you.
Miss Cardew, I knew there was some slight error. This gentleman who's right now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Mr. Algernon Moncrief? Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Are you really called John?
Well, I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But the fact is, my name is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wrong Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is one question I should be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, pray allow us to put you one last question. Both of us are engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is of some matter of importance for us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it pains me very much to speak the truth. In fact, this is the first time ever that I have been ever reduced to such a painful position. And I'm not quite experienced in this. However, to tell you quite the truth, I don't have any brother Ernest. In fact, I don't have any brother at all. I never had a brother, and I do not have the smallest intention of having any brother in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
You never had a brother of any kind?
Never, not even of any kind.
Cecily, it seems that neither of us are engaged to be married to anyone.
It is a very unpleasant position for a young girl to find herself in.
Pray follow me into the house. They will hardly care to venture after us.
Yes, men are so cowardly.
This ghastly state of things is what you call bun-bearing, I suppose.
Yes. Yes, and a very wonderful bun-bearing. In fact, the most wonderful bun-bearing I ever had in my life.
You have no right to be bun-bearing in here.
Well, one has a right to do bun-bearing everywhere. One chooses. Every serious bun-bearist knows that.
Serious bun-bearist? Good heavens. Well, the only good thing out of this entire wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. Now you won't able to go to the town as often as you used to, dear Algie, and that is a good thing.
Well, your little brother is a bit off color too. You won't be able to go to London as frequent as your wicked custom was. Not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct to Miss Cardew, I may say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like Cecily is perfectly inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense of your deceiving a young, thoroughly experienced lady like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact she is my cousin.
I'm engaged to be married to Gwendolyn. I love her.
Well, I'm engaged to be married to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, there's certainly no chance of you and Miss Fairfax of getting united either.
Well, that is no business of yours.
Well, if what was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. Only people like stockbrokers do that.
Well, I don't understand. How can you just calmly sit there and eat muffins where we are in this painful and gross position? It's absurd. I think you're perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter will fall on my tongue.
I said it was perfectly heartless of your eating muffins at all under these circumstances.
Well, when I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that comforts me. I'm eating muffins because I love them, and I'm especially fond of muffins.
Well, that does not mean that you will eat them all in a greedy way.
Why don't you have tea cake? I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens. I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
Yes, but you said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you eating muffins under these circumstances.
Well, the muffins remain sane.
Algy, I wish to goodness sake you would just go. You speak just nonsense.
Well, I wouldn't go unless I have my dinner. Nobody does. That's absurd. I think people only vegetarians do. And besides, I made some arrangements to get christened by Dr. Chasuble under the name of Ernest at 5:45.
Well, the sooner you give up that idea, the better it is. I have made an appointment myself this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened as Ernest this afternoon at 5:30. And I will certainly take the name of Ernest. Gwendolyn would wish it. And besides, I have not been christened at all. I mean, everyone would believe that, even Dr. Chasuble would believe that. It's entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been Christian for years.
But you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can bear it. But my dear Jack, venturing it to now for you could be very dangerous. You should not forget someone very close to you got into dreadful scrapes. Got carried away by a severe chill.
But you said that a severe chill isn't quite hereditary, didn't you?
Yes, I did. But now it is. You see, science is making wonderful improvements.
Oh, that is nonsense. You only speak nonsense.
Yeah, we're at muffins again. I told you I was fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
And why do you serve tea cake to your guests? What plans have you for hospitality?
Algy, I told you to go. Why don't you just go? I don't want you here.
Well, I have my tea left, and I can see one muffin is still left.
The fact that they did not follow us into the house, like anyone else would have done, seems to me to show they have some sense of shame left.
They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
But they are looking at us. Couldn't you cough?
But I don't have a cup.
Oh, they're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
But we will maintain a dignified silence.
Certainly. That's the only thing to do now.
This dignified dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first ones to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, pray allow me to put you one last question.
Dearest Gwendolyn, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
To get a chance to meet you, Cecily.
That looks like a satisfactory explanation.
Thank you.
If you want to believe so, Cecily.
I don't, but that does not deny the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation have you got for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you can come up to town to meet me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, and I intend to crush them. Their answer seems satisfactory. Especially Mr. Worthing's. It seems to me to have a stamp of truth upon it.
I'm more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone, fine, absolutely
But should we forgive them?
Yes, I mean no.
Yes, I forgot. There are principles at stake. So, which one of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Couldn't we both speak at the same time?
An admirable idea. I always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be Christian this afternoon.
For my sake, you're ready to do this terrible a thing.
I am.
To please me, are you ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
It is absurd to talk of the equality of sexes. Where moments of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are indefinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage, of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
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 Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolyn, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, Mr. Worthing, of my daughter's certain departure by her trusty maid whose confidence I bought with a small coin, I followed her at once by a lucky stray. Her unhappy father is, I'm glad to say, still under the impression that she is attending nothing more than an unusually long lecture at the university. I do not propose to undeceive him. I have never undeceived him on any matter. I would think it wrong. But you, sir, must understand that any communication between yourself and my daughter shall cease to exist immediately. On this point, as on all points, I remain firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And as regards Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Bunbury doesn't live here. In fact, Bunbury's dead.
Dead? When did this Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
He was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of some revolutionary outrage? I did not know that this Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
Aunt Augusta, doctors found out that Bunbury couldn't live, and that's why Bunbury is dead.
This Mr. Bunbury seems to have had great confidence in the opinions of his physicians. Well, I'm glad that he finally finally took a definitive course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that this Mr. Bunbury is out of the way, may I ask you, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew is holding in what seems to me in a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Montes and I are engaged to be married.
I do not know if there is anything particular in this air in a particular part of Hertfordshire. But the number of engagements that go on here seems to be particularly above the average. I think some questioning on my part will not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected to any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any persons or families whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cecily Cardew is the granddaughter of late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrade Square Southeast, Griffiths Park, Dorking, Surrey.
Well, 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof do I have of their authenticity?
I have carefully reserved all the papers of the period. They are open for inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby. A firm of the highest position in its profession. Indeed, I'm told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. Well, so far, I am satisfied.
That is so kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I will also let you know that please know that I have also in my possession certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, and confirmation. And also the measles, both the English and the German variety.
A life crowded with incident, I see, though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young woman. I myself am not in favor of such preliminary experiences. Gwendolyn, the time for our departure arrives. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, may I ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune?
Oh, about 130,000 pounds in the funds. That is all, Lady Bracknell. Goodbye. So nice to have seen you.
Just a moment, Mr. Worthing. 130,000 pounds. And in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most admirable young woman now that I really look at her. Few of the young ladies of today have any admirable qualities. Very qualities that last or improve with time. We regret, I live to say, in an age of service. Come here, dear child. How old are you?
I'm actually 18, but I agreed to 20 when I go for evening parties.
Turn around for me, won't you, dear? No, dear. The side profile is what I want. Yes, the chin a little higher up, dear. Like I suspected. Mr. Mount, there are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
I think she's the most prettiest girl. I don't care about social possibilities, Aunt Augusta.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. The only people who can't get into it do that. My dear, of course you know that my nephew has nothing to rely upon but his debts. But I had never approved of mercenary marriages. In fact, when I was to be married to Lord Bracknell, I had absolutely nothing at all. But I never dreamt of letting it stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may call me Aunt Augusta, Cecily.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had taken place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I do not approve of long engagements. In fact, I think they give people the chance to find out each other's characters before marriage, which I think is entirely unadvisable.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, but I have to say that I am the guardian of Miss Cecily Cardew and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. And that consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon has nothing. But he looks everything. What more could one want?
I'm very sorry to speak the truth to you, Lady Bracknell, but I do not approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful. My nephew Algernon, impossible. He's an Oregonian.
Once again, I'm so sorry to speak the truth, but he is the one who came to my residence this morning and took alienated the affection of my ward. And after that, he drank all the wine my butler has informed me just now. I was preserving the wine for myself, specially. And that's not all. He invited himself to tea and devoured all the muffins. And that is still not all. He perfectly knew that I did not have any brother, that I never had a brother, and I do not have the smallest intention of having a brother. I told that to him specifically yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, upon careful consideration, I've decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct towards you.
That is again so kind of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my decision is unalterable. I do not take my cousin.
Come here, dear child. 18, but admitting to 20 at dinner parties. Well, I suspect that it is not long before you will be free from the bonds of tutelage. And then your guardian's opinion will not matter at all.
Lady Bracknell, it would only be fair to tell you that according to her grandfather's will, Miss Cecily won't be of age till she is 35.
Well, I don't see why that is a problem. 35 is a pleasantly good age to be married at. In fact, London society is full of women of the highest birth who are of 35 years of age out of their own free will. Lady Dumbleton, for instance. Ever since I remember, Lady Dumbleton arrived at the age of 35, which was at the age of 40, which was a few years ago. So I don't see why our Cecily could not be even more charming than she is now. There'll be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, will you accept me at 35?
Of course, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt instinctively. But I don't like waiting. I can't even wait for 5 minutes. I know I'm not punctual, but I appreciate punctuality in others. And waiting to get married is out of question.
Then what shall we do, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Well, Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states herself that she positively cannot wait till she's 35. A remark which shows to me an somewhat impatient character. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
Well, the matter is entirely in your own hands, Lady Bracknell. The moment you say yes to my marriage with Quentin, I will most gladly say yes to the marriage of Cecily and Algernon.
That is out of the question, Mr. Worthing.
Oh, well, then a passionate celibacy is all that we can look forward to.
That is not the future I desire for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can decide for himself. Come, Gwendolen, we have not a moment to lose. We have missed 5, if not 6 trains, and any more will expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir. Is that not somewhat a little premature?
Oh, no, Lady Bracknell. Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for an immediate baptism.
At their age? That is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you from getting baptized. Your uncle will be most disappointed to hear that this is how you're spending your time and your money.
Am I to understand that there won't be any christenings today?
Well, Dr. Stoswell, as things are right now, I don't think it would be of much practical value to either.
I am grieved to hear such views from you, Mr. Worthing. You seem to echo the views of Anabaptists, views which I've refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. Well, as you seem to employ a view which is somewhat very secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have been told Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry for 1.5 hours.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to meet her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter is of grave importance to myself and Lord Bracknell. Is this Miss Prism a woman of repellent aspect and is somewhat remotely connected to education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the epitome of respectability.
It's obviously the same woman. May I ask, what position does she occupy in your household?
Lady Bracknell, it is with a heavy heart that I say that I must tell you.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cecily Cardio's constant companion and admirable governess.
No matter what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Oh, she approaches. She is mine.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear son. I've been waiting for you there for 1 hour and 3/4 quarters.
Prism. Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house with a pram in charge that contained a baby of the male sex. But you never returned. 3 weeks later, the pram was discovered in an unoccupied corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of an unusually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there, Prism. Where is that baby?
It is with great shame that I admit, Lady Bracknell, that I do not know. I really wish I did. The plain matter of the facts are these. On the morning of the day that you mentioned, a day that is branded in my memory, I was planning to take the baby out in the bassinet. I had also with me a large, black, capacious bag where I intended to place my novel. But in a moment of complete mental abstraction, I placed the baby in the handbag and the novel in the bassinet.
Miss Prism, where is the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to you. Please, say where did you keep the handbag with the infant in it?
Cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire at once. Gwendolyn, please wait for me, will you?
If you're not too long, I'll take you right.
Well, Lady Bracknell, what do you think this means?
They are not even suspect Dr. Chasuble. Such coincidences are not to happen in families of the highest repute. It is not the thing.
Uncle Francis, strangely agitated.
Well, your guardian has always had a very emotional nature.
It sounds like he's having an argument. I hate arguments. They are vulgar and often convincing.
Well, it seems to have stopped now.
I wish to God that he make up his mind.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Miss Prism, please pray examine this bag carefully. Is this the handbag that you left in the cloakroom?
This does seem to be mine. Here are the injuries that it received from the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in my happier and merrier days. Oh, here on the linen are the stains from the explosion of a temperance beverage. This happened in Beavermint. Oh, here on the lock are my initials. I got them down in an extravagant mode. I'd forgotten about them. This is indeed mine. I'm so glad you returned it to me. It has indeed been very difficult to live in without it, after all.
Miss Prism, more has been restored to you than this handbag. I am the infant that you kept in the bag.
You?
Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I'm unmarried.
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow. But then, who has a right to cast a stone upon someone who has suffered? Why should there be a different law for a man and different for a woman? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there seems to be some error. I do not know anything about you. Here, Lady Bracknell might be able to tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to be inquisitive, but can you please tell who I am?
Well, Mr. Worthing, the answer that I have to give you will not altogether please you. You happen to be the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief. And consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Alger's elder brother. Then I have a brother after all. I knew I had a brother. I always told I had a brother. Cecily, how could I have ever doubted that? My brother. Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algie, you young scoundrel. Now you have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never treated me like a brother before.
Well, not in today, old boy. I must tell you, I was a bit out of practice.
My own. Wait, what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Good heavens, I guess that is yet to be answered. But your decision on the question of my name is still irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my effect.
You're such a noble nature, Gwendolyn.
Well, then I guess the matter of the name should be brought to present. Augusta, a moment. The moment when Miss Prism lost me in the handbag, had I already been christened?
Well, every affection your parents could lavish on you, including christening, they did.
Then I had been christened already. That is settled. Now, what was my Christian name?
Well, since you were the elder child, you were naturally named after your father.
But what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot recall at the present moment. I am pretty sure he had one, however. He was eccentric, but only in the later years. And that was the result of the Indian climate, and marriage, and indigestion, and so on and so forth.
Algie, don't you remember our father's Christian name?
Well, we were never on talking terms, you see. He died before I was a year old.
Well then, the army lists of the army list would contain his name, right?
Well, the general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. However, I do believe that any army directory would contain his name.
Well, the army lists of the last 40 years, I know. But they should have been my constant companion. I've just kept them. Here it is. M. Generals, Malum, Maxcom, Magley. What ghastly names they have. Mark B. Bixby, Mobs. Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840, Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel General, 1869, Christian names. Ernest John. I always told you, Gwendolyn, that my name was Ernest, didn't I? I mean, of course, my name is Ernest. It naturally is Ernest.
My own Ernest. I always knew your name was Ernest. You're the most honest-looking person ever.
It's a terrible thing for a man to know that he has been speaking nothing but the truth for his entire life. Gwendolyn, can you forgive me?
I think I can, because I'm sure you're bound to change.
Gwendolyn, my own.
Darling.
Letitia.
Frederick, at last.
Cecily, at last.
At last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be showing signs of triviality.
Well, Lady Bracknell, for the first time ever in my life, I have realized the vital importance of being earnest.